Let's get right into it. Number 10. The Sitting Epidemic. Somewhere right now, roughly 4 billion people are sitting down. At desks, on couches, in cars, on toilets, just absolutely committed to the horizontal relationship between the human backside and a flat surface. And most of them have absolutely no idea they're slowly doing the biological equivalent of leaving a car engine running in a closed garage. Here's the thing about sitting. Your body was not designed to do it for 8 consecutive hours. It was designed to walk, squat, climb, sprint away from things that wanted to eat it. But now you sit. You sit at breakfast, you sit during your commute, you sit at work, you sit when you get home to relax from all the sitting. And your cardiovascular system is taking notes, and not the good kind. The science is genuinely unsettling. Extended sitting, we're talking 4+ hours a day, which, congratulations, you almost certainly hit before noon, is independently linked to increased risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. The word independently is the fun part. That means even if you go to the gym every morning, if you then sit motionless for the rest of the day, you've basically negotiated a truce between health and destruction that your body is not impressed by. Researchers have started calling it the sitting disease, which sounds fake but is a real term used by real doctors who are very concerned. The mechanism is almost poetic in how passive-aggressively your body handles it. When you sit for long stretches, the electrical activity in your leg muscles essentially turns off. Your calorie-burning rate drops to about 1 calorie per minute. Lipoprotein lipase, the enzyme responsible for processing fat, plummets by about 90%. Your blood sugar spikes after meals and stays spiked because your muscles, which are supposed to help clear glucose from your blood, are currently on an unannounced vacation. Your circulation slows, your posture collapses, and your hip flexors begin the slow journey toward becoming the tightest, angriest muscles in your entire body. And the worst part? You feel fine. That's the whole trap. Sitting doesn't hurt while it's happening. It's a background damage dealer. A damage over time debuff with a 30-year cooldown. Basically, your body is billing you for the sitting now and sending the invoice sometime around retirement. Number 9. Hot drinks are quietly unhinged. Every morning, hundreds of millions of people wake up, shuffle toward the kitchen, and pour boiling liquid directly into their faces. And they do it with the peaceful expression of someone who has absolutely no idea they're engaging in a mildly risky thermal event. Coffee, tea, hot chocolate, the daily ritual of the hot beverage is so universally loved that questioning it feels almost morally offensive. But here's what your esophagus would like you to know. It has feelings. Specifically, it has a temperature tolerance, and repeatedly blowing past that tolerance is the kind of thing that accumulates over decades into something significantly more unpleasant than a burned tongue. In 2016, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer formally classified drinking very hot beverages, defined as anything above 65 degrees Celsius, about 149 Fahrenheit, as probably carcinogenic to humans. That's Group 2A, the same category as red meat and working the night shift. The mechanism involves repeated thermal injury to the cells lining your esophagus. Every time you sip something scorching, you're causing microscopic damage to that lining. Your body repairs it. You do it again tomorrow. Over years and years, all that repairing and re-injuring creates conditions where cell mutations can occur, and mutations in the esophagus are specifically associated with esophageal cancer, which has one of the lower survival rates among cancers because it tends to be caught late. Now, the important asterisk. This isn't about enjoying a warm coffee. This is specifically about the demographic of people who drink their beverages at genuinely extreme temperatures and do so multiple times a day for their entire adult lives. Countries where tea culture involves scalding hot drinks consumed very quickly show significantly higher rates of esophageal cancer in the research literature. Iran, China, parts of South America with the mate tradition. But here's the quiet irony. The solution isn't to stop drinking coffee or tea. The solution is to just wait 5 minutes. That's it. That's the entire medical recommendation. Let it cool down slightly before you drink it. And yet, here we are, millions of us every morning, impatiently sipping something that is technically still the temperature of a mild industrial process, because waiting feels impossible before caffeine. Your impatience, it turns out, is a slow-acting lifestyle choice. Number 8. Earbuds are cooking your future. Picture a 14-year-old. They've got earbuds in, which these days is basically a universal constant like gravity, and they're listening to music at a volume that a passing adult might generously describe as unnecessary. Now picture that same person at 40, leaning forward at a restaurant asking their partner to repeat themselves for the third time, wondering why everything sounds slightly like it's happening through a wall. That is a cause and effect chain that is currently happening in real time across an entire global generation, and almost nobody is doing anything about it. The World Health Organization estimates that over 1.1 billion young people worldwide are at risk of noise-induced hearing loss specifically because of unsafe listening habits on personal audio devices. Not because of concerts, not because of construction, because of earbuds, the friendly little devices you voluntarily inserted into your ears this morning. Here's how it works. Your inner ear contains tiny hair cells called stereocilia. And yes, they are shaped like tiny hairs, and yes, that detail is somehow both cute and horrible given what's about to happen to them. These cells vibrate in response to sound and send electrical signals to your brain, which your brain interprets as music, speech, or the ambient sounds of existing. They are extraordinarily sensitive. They are also critically not replaceable. You are born with a fixed number of these cells, and once they are damaged or destroyed, they do not regenerate. Science is working on this. Science is not done yet. Loud sounds, specifically sustained sounds above 85 decibels, cause physical trauma to these cells. The louder the sound and the longer the exposure, the worse the damage. The average person listening to music on earbuds at 70% volume is hitting somewhere between 85 and 100 decibels depending on the device and the track. An hour at 100 decibels can start causing cumulative damage. And most people are not listening for an hour. They're listening for their entire commute, their workout, their work-from-home shift, their evening walk, and their pre-sleep wind-down playlist. Noise-induced hearing loss doesn't announce itself. It doesn't hurt while it's happening. It's another stealth tax, paid in your 20s, collected in your 50s. By the time you notice the high frequencies going slightly fuzzy, the cells that handled those frequencies are already long gone. They didn't even leave a note. Basically, you've been voluntarily attending a very private, very long concert, and the venue doesn't offer refunds. Number 7. Driving is statistically unhinged. Every single morning, approximately 1.4 billion cars pull out of driveways and parking spots around the world, merge into lanes, and begin performing a coordinated group activity that, if you described it to someone who had never seen it before, would sound absolutely deranged. You're telling me billions of people strap themselves into multi-ton metal projectiles, hurl themselves down strips of pavement at speeds the human body was never built to survive, separated from oncoming projectiles going the opposite direction by nothing but a painted line and a loose social agreement? And they do this while tired, while eating, while checking their phones. Yes, every day, before 9 a.m. Road traffic accidents kill approximately 1.35 million people every year globally, making them one of the leading causes of death for people aged 5 to 29. Not cancer, not heart disease, cars. For young people especially, driving is statistically one of the most dangerous things they will do in their entire lives, and it's something most of them do twice a day without a second thought. The psychology here is a phenomenon called risk habituation, and it is a beautiful example of the brain's ability to completely betray you. The more you do something dangerous without immediate consequence, the less dangerous your brain registers it as being. You have driven to work 400 times and not died. Therefore, your brain concludes driving to work is safe. This is not logic. This is pattern recognition wearing logic's clothes. What makes cars extra sinister is that most of the danger doesn't come from you. It comes from every other driver on the road with you. People who are tired, distracted, emotional, overconfident, undertrained, or some cocktail of all five. You could be the most careful, alert, sober driver in human history, and you are still sharing a road with people who are replying to texts, eating breakfast sandwiches, and having arguments with their passenger simultaneously. You've essentially signed up for a group project where the stakes are your skeletal integrity and you had absolutely no say in who your teammates are. The irony, of course, is that people are statistically terrified of flying, which kills roughly 400 people per year globally in commercial aviation, and completely unbothered by driving, which kills over 1 million. Your brain is bad at math, and it only updates the math when it's too late to use it. Number 6. You were designed to pee more. Here is a situation that happens to virtually every person who has ever held a desk job, attended a long meeting, or been on a road trip. You need to use the bathroom, but the timing is inconvenient, so you just don't. You hold it. You negotiate with your bladder. You promise it 5 more minutes, approximately 17 times. And your bladder, like a coworker who has been gaslit too many times, just quietly keeps the grievance on file. Occasional bladder holding is fine. Your body actually has mechanisms for this. The detrusor muscle and the urethral sphincter are designed to work together to give you voluntary control over urination. This is a good and necessary feature. The problem is what happens when occasionally becomes a habit, because some people are genuinely, chronically, aggressively holding their urine for hours at a time as a standard operating procedure. When you consistently wait too long to urinate, a few things happen that your body is not thrilled about. First, the bladder stretches beyond its comfortable capacity. It's designed to hold roughly 400 to 500 milliliters comfortably, and when you regularly push it past that, the bladder wall begins to weaken and lose its natural elasticity over time. Second, urine that sits in the bladder for extended periods gives bacteria more time to multiply. The urinary tract is not a sterile environment. Bacteria are constantly trying to establish residence. And slow drainage is essentially rolling out the welcome mat for a urinary tract infection. Women are particularly vulnerable here due to anatomical differences in urethral length. But the deeply strange psychological component is that habitual holding can actually retrain your bladder in the wrong direction. Some people condition themselves to ignore the go now signal for so long that eventually the signal misfires, overfires, or develops the resting anxiety of a poorly managed intern. This can contribute to overactive bladder syndrome, where the urgency signals become erratic and untrustworthy. You've essentially trained an organ that was working perfectly fine to develop a complex. There's also a more immediate risk that most people have heard of but dismiss as urban legend. It's not. Extremely full bladders during car accidents can rupture, which is as bad as it sounds. Your bladder, when overfull and subjected to sudden compressive force, does not have great structural integrity. Doctors have a phrase for this. It involves the word traumatic. You don't want to hear the rest of it. Basically, your body built a perfectly good drainage schedule, and you looked at it and said, "I'll get to it." Outstanding. Number 5. Your house is trying to suffocate you. Politely. There's a comforting idea that home is a safe place, a refuge, the one environment you can control, unlike the chaotic outside world with its exhaust fumes and pollen and strangers. You're inside. You're protected. The air is clean. The air is not clean. Indoor air quality is, depending on the study you read, anywhere from 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which spends considerable time thinking about air, has ranked indoor air pollution among the top 5 environmental health risks facing the public. And the reason almost nobody talks about it is because you can't see it, it doesn't smell bad most of the time, and your living room is slowly compromising your lung function, doesn't have the same dramatic urgency as, say, smog. Here's what's actually floating around in the average home. Volatile organic compounds, known as VOCs, off-gas from furniture, carpeting, paint, cleaning products, air fresheners, and basically every synthetic material you've ever bought from a furniture store. Formaldehyde specifically, yes, the embalming fluid, is released by pressed wood furniture, laminate flooring, and certain adhesives, and it sits invisibly in your air at low but consistent concentrations. Particulate matter from cooking, candles, and incense is a legitimate respiratory irritant. Mold spores exist in virtually every home with any moisture history. Radon, a colorless, odorless radioactive gas produced by the natural decay of uranium in soil, seeps up through the ground into basements and ground floors, and is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States after smoking. The biological irony is that modern insulation and weatherproofing, the very things that make homes energy efficient and comfortable, also trap all of these pollutants inside. Older, leakier homes actually have better air exchange just by being drafty. You upgraded your windows, sealed your doors, and inadvertently turned your apartment into a very cozy little pollution chamber. The solution is straightforward and almost offensively simple. Open a window. Increase ventilation. Use an air purifier if you're particularly committed to breathing well. But here's the punchline. Most people living in heavily polluted cities keep their windows shut specifically to keep the outdoor pollution out, while the indoor pollution quietly waves at them from across the room. You sealed yourself in with the enemy and locked the good air outside. Phenomenal strategy. Number 4. Sleep is attacking you. Every night, you voluntarily lose consciousness for 7 to 8 hours, your body becomes temporarily paralyzed, your brain starts hallucinating in high definition, and your heart rate drops to levels that, in any other context, would prompt someone to call for help. And you do this by choice. You look forward to it. You spend money on optimizing it. Sleep is, objectively, one of the stranger things humans do, and it is also, quietly, one of the more physically eventful. The paralysis part is real and it has a name. Atonia. During REM sleep, your brainstem actively suppresses voluntary muscle movement to prevent you from physically acting out your dreams. This is a good system. When it fails, you get REM sleep behavior disorder, which is a condition where people punch their partners, fall out of bed, and run into furniture while dreaming. That's the system working incorrectly, and it is a documented medical phenomenon, which means the system that keeps you still while you dream is load-bearing in ways most people never consider. But here's where it gets more nuanced. Sleep apnea, where the airway partially or fully collapses during sleep, causing breathing to stop repeatedly throughout the night, affects an estimated 1 billion people worldwide. 1 billion. It's one of the most prevalent sleep disorders on the planet and one of the most underdiagnosed, specifically because the person experiencing it is unconscious when it happens. The symptoms bleed into waking life as fatigue, brain fog, and mood dysregulation, and millions of people attribute these entirely to stress, age, or personality, never realizing their airway is staging a nightly revolt. Untreated sleep apnea is associated with significantly elevated risks of hypertension, stroke, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. The mechanism is a combination of oxygen deprivation, sleep fragmentation, and chronic stress hormone elevation. Every time your airway closes and your oxygen drops, your body jolts into a microarousal, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Not enough to fully wake you, just enough to destroy the quality of your rest and keep your cardiovascular system in a low-grade state of emergency. Every night, for years. Then there's the position you sleep in. Stomach sleeping specifically compresses the cervical spine, twists the neck into positions that physical therapists describe with visible concern, and restricts diaphragmatic breathing. Millions of people do it because it feels comfortable, because the body, in a classic move, often finds the harmful position the coziest one. Sleep is supposed to be the safe part of the day, the off switch, the recovery window, and it mostly is, but your body spends a solid portion of it on fire control duty, doing repairs, running maintenance cycles, and apparently also occasionally stopping breathing for brief moments while you dream about something completely unrelated. Rest well. Number 3. Ultra-processed food is engineered to win. Walk into any gas station, grocery store, office break room, or airport in the industrialized world, and you are immediately surrounded by products that were not so much made as engineered. Foods designed in laboratories by teams of food scientists whose explicit professional goal was to identify the precise sensory combination, the right amount of salt, fat, sugar, texture, and crunch, that makes your brain's reward system light up like a pinball machine and forget to send the stop eating signal. This is not conspiracy. This is marketing strategy documented in food industry research, described openly in books written by former food scientists, and studied extensively by nutritional epidemiologists who are having a collectively terrible time processing what they're finding. Ultra-processed foods, a category formally defined by the NOVA classification system as products that contain ingredients you would never find in a home kitchen, like emulsifiers, flavor enhancers, modified starches, and chemical preservatives, now make up more than 50% of the average diet in countries like the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. In some demographics, it's closer to 80%. This shift happened in roughly 2 generations, which in evolutionary terms is a rounding error. The research emerging over the last decade is grim in a very specific way. Ultra-processed food consumption is independently associated, again independently controlling for total calorie intake, exercise, income, and education, with increased risks of obesity, depression, cardiovascular disease, colorectal cancer, and all-cause mortality. A major study published in the British Medical Journal found that every 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed food in the diet was associated with a 14% higher risk of death from all causes. From all causes. That's a remarkably broad statement for a nutrition study to be making. The mechanism is layered and still being unraveled. There's the nutritional displacement angle. If your diet is 60% ultra-processed food, it's 60% food that's typically low in fiber, micronutrients, and protein and high in refined carbohydrates and inflammatory fats. There's the gut microbiome angle. Emulsifiers specifically appear to disrupt the intestinal mucus barrier and alter microbial composition in ways linked to inflammation. There's the additives angle. Certain dyes, sweeteners, and preservatives show up in emerging research with increasingly uncomfortable associations. But the sinister genius is the engineering. These foods are specifically designed to override satiety, to be hyperpalatable in ways natural foods aren't, and to create what researchers politely call hyperactivation of reward pathways. Less politely, they're built to be mildly addictive. Your willpower is not the problem. You're playing chess against a team of PhDs whose entire job was to make sure you don't stop at one. Number 2. The phone in your hand at 11 p.m. It's late. You should be asleep. You know you should be asleep. Every rational part of you is aware that you have to be somewhere in the morning, that you are tired, that tomorrow you is going to have significant opinions about the decision current you is currently making. And yet here you are, horizontal in the dark, face illuminated by a small glowing rectangle, watching a video about, and this is genuinely the content, a raccoon opening a jar. You are not alone. Billions of people do this exact thing every single night, and the compound damage it's doing to global sleep health, mental health, and cognitive function is something researchers describe with the specific exhaustion of people who have been trying to get this message out for a decade and keep getting interrupted by notifications. The blue light issue is real, but it's also the least interesting part of the story. Yes, short-wavelength blue light emitted by screens suppresses melatonin production by signaling to your brain that it's daytime, delaying your circadian rhythm and making it significantly harder to fall asleep. This is documented, measurable, and addressed only partially by night mode settings, because the light spectrum is just one variable in a more complicated system. The bigger issue is psychological arousal. Social media, news feeds, video platforms, and messaging apps are all specifically designed using the same intermittent reinforcement mechanics as slot machines. Unpredictable reward delivery keeps you scrolling because your dopamine system is constitutionally unable to ignore the possibility that the next post might be interesting, funny, or socially relevant to you. It's not that you lack discipline. It's that you're running 300,000-year-old neurological hardware against software that was purpose-built to exploit it, optimized by billions of dollars of engineering and behavioral psychology research, and updated continuously based on which design changes keep people engaged longest. The sleep deprivation that results is not trivial. Chronic insufficient sleep, defined as regularly getting less than 7 hours, is associated with impaired immune function, increased cardiovascular risk, weight gain, reduced emotional regulation, impaired memory consolidation, and significantly elevated risk of anxiety and depression. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist at UC Berkeley who wrote what is genuinely one of the most alarming books about a biological process that everyone does, has called insufficient sleep the greatest public health challenge we face in the 21st century. And the last touch of irony? The content keeping you up is mostly forgettable. The raccoon with the jar. A clip from a show you've already seen. An argument between strangers about something that will not matter in 48 hours. Your brain-traded REM sleep, the stage responsible for emotional processing, creativity, and long-term memory for that. Your nervous system is not angry. It's just disappointed. Number 1. Existing while stressed. Here it is. The number one thing billions of people do every single day that is technically, measurably, and in several peer-reviewed journals, dangerous. Not skydiving. Not eating gas station sushi. Not any of the dramatic, cinematic risks that feel dangerous. The winner is something so ordinary, so woven into the texture of modern existence, that most people have stopped registering it as a physical event at all. Chronic stress. The low-grade, background hum, never fully resolves, always something variety. The kind that doesn't come from being chased by a predator, which is what it was designed for, but from emails, deadlines, financial anxiety, traffic, social comparison, existential dread, and the general ambient pressure of being a person in the 21st century. Your stress response, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, if you want to impress someone at a party, is one of the most sophisticated survival systems in biology. When you perceive a threat, your hypothalamus fires off a signal that triggers a cascade of hormonal events culminating in the release of cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases. Blood pressure rises. Blood sugar spikes to fuel your muscles. Your immune function is temporarily suppressed because if you're about to be eaten, fighting infection is a tomorrow problem. Digestion slows. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational decision-making and long-term planning, gets partially sidelined in favor of faster, reactive processing. Your entire biology pivots toward one goal: survive the next 60 seconds. This is a magnificent, elegant, life-saving system. It is also absolutely catastrophic when it never turns off. The original stress response was designed for acute, short-duration threats. Tiger appears. Cortisol spikes. You run or fight. Tiger situation resolves one way or another. Cortisol clears. System returns to baseline. The whole cycle takes minutes. That's the deal your biology made with the environment approximately 200,000 years ago, and it held up just fine for most of that time. Modern stress doesn't work like that. Modern stress is the mortgage that doesn't go away. The job security that's been uncertain for 3 years. The relationship that's been quietly difficult for longer than you've admitted. The news cycle that delivers a fresh emergency every 4 hours. These are not 60-second tigers. These are ambient, formless, non-resolvable threats that your nervous system has no category for, so it just keeps the stress response simmering. Cortisol stays elevated. And chronically elevated cortisol is, to use a clinical understatement, not ideal. The downstream effects read like a catalog of the most common diseases in the industrialized world. Chronic stress directly contributes to hypertension, cortisol constricts blood vessels and raises blood pressure, and sustained high blood pressure is one of the primary drivers of heart attack and stroke. It suppresses immune function over time, making you more susceptible to infections and slower to recover from illness. It disrupts sleep architecture, specifically reducing slow-wave and REM sleep, which feeds into the vicious cycle of being tired and therefore more emotionally reactive and therefore more stressed. It promotes visceral fat accumulation. Cortisol specifically targets the abdominal region, which is the fat deposit most closely associated with metabolic disease. It impairs memory consolidation and shrinks the hippocampus, the brain region central to learning and memory, with prolonged exposure. It exacerbates gastrointestinal conditions, autoimmune disorders, and skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis, because all of these systems are deeply entangled with your immune and endocrine function. And perhaps most perversely, chronic stress impairs the very cognitive functions you would need to address the sources of your stress. It narrows attention, reduces creativity, degrades decision-making quality, and makes it harder to feel motivated or optimistic about future outcomes. Your brain under chronic stress is actively bad at solving the problems that are causing the chronic stress. It's a closed loop with no obvious exit, which is the kind of design flaw you'd expect from a system that was never intended to handle a 30-year mortgage. The research on psychosocial stress and mortality is now extensive enough that it has moved from interesting finding to public health concern. Studies on loneliness, a potent and under-discussed stressor, show mortality effects comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Studies on job strain, financial insecurity, and perceived lack of control over one's life consistently show significant reductions in life expectancy. A landmark meta-analysis covering over 300,000 people found that social isolation and loneliness increased the odds of early death by roughly 26 to 32%. The kicker, the final twist, the detail that makes this the undisputed number one on this list, is that the danger is invisible precisely because it's universal. Heart disease from sitting is an abstraction. Hearing loss from earbuds is a future problem. But stress? Stress feels like just the way things are. It feels like personality. It feels like being a responsible adult who takes things seriously. It's been so thoroughly normalized that taking it seriously as a health risk feels almost melodramatic, like telling someone that breathing too shallow is slowly undermining their autonomic nervous system, which incidentally it also is. You are carrying right now in your body a low-grade chemical state that your biology classifies as an ongoing emergency. You have probably been carrying it for years. It has a physical address in your cortisol levels, your resting heart rate, and the baseline tension in your shoulders that you've stopped noticing because it's been there so long it feels like your factory setting. The most dangerous thing billions of people do every day isn't dramatic. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. It just looks like a person, sitting at a desk, holding a hot coffee they haven't let cool, earbuds in, phone in their hand, mildly stressed with somewhere to be. That's all of us. That's the whole list. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.